everyone, it's Jennifer from Flux. Welcome back to week 3 of the 2023 Flux Spring Crochet Along. We are hard at work on our gorgeous Wisteria Trellis throw. This is a lovely springy throw. It's soft, it's in gorgeous muted tones. And last week we learned how to make the first square, which is actually on the finished blanket, was up here. We learned how to make our first square of our blanket. This week, we're going to start learning how to add more squares onto our blanket using the join as you go technique. So we made our first full square and we're going to start adding more squares onto our square until our blanket is as large as we would like it to be. So it's very customizable. Now I have kind of like a baby blanket throw size, but you can make yours large enough to go over your entire couch or in a king size bed. You can really kind of scale it however you want just by adding more or less squares to your piece. Also, I meant to say this before last week, but mine is square. My blanket is square, which means when I did my squares, I have an equal number of squares going this way and vertically. So you can really make yours rectangular too if you want to just add a few more rows to the top or to the bottom or what have you. Okay, so we're going to be doing the join as you go technique. Now, I did want to say over at the blog, and I'll put the link down below, I have this blanket I kind of photographed it from high up so you can see the entire blanket, and I've numbered each color. So each color has a number designated to it, so you can see exactly where the purple squares are placed, exactly where the green squares are placed, if you really want to see it kind of mapped out and charted out visually, for those of you who are visual people like myself. So I kind of mapped out the colors that way too, if you'd like to see it that way. If you want to mix them up, that's fine, but I wanted to map them out for you if you wanted to, so that none of the same color is touching itself. Now actually that's not true. They touch each other at the corners here, but there's never two colors side by side because you'd sort of get like a flood of color, okay? So you can see the colors mapped out at the link below. Now, also, if you haven't joined our Ravelry group and our Facebook group, be sure and hop over there. That's our community of cowl makers. So you can show off the colors that you're using, ask questions. There's a lot of experienced crocheters if you want to jump in and help people. It's a great place to hang out if you're working on this project. Also, one last thing before we get into our tutorial, use the hashtag FiberFluxCowl to share your work on social media. It's really fun to click the hashtag and kind of see what everybody's doing. It's really exciting. So let's go jump right in and learn how to connect all these squares together. Okay, so for today's tutorial, I have my hook and my scissors for snipping later. And I also have the first square. Now we made this square last week. In case that you missed this tutorial, we made the full complete first granny square rounds 1 through 4 together. You'll need a full finished granny square. The link is below if you need to go back and watch that tutorial. This week we're going to start with a different color. We're going to grab our second color, which is this one's the tourmaline. Just to recap, this is Provence. This is tourmaline, and then we're also going to use a third color called bone. So before we begin, I wanted to show you, I sort of made a little map of how we're going to kind of plan out our colors. So this was our first, P for Provence is our first color. And then we have T for tourmaline. So the idea here is not to repeat colors. We don't want two purple side by side, and we don't want like a cluster of 3 green squares. We don't want like blobs of color. So I sort of mapped them out. Now if you notice, they're on a diagonal stripe pattern, and that way you avoid ever having 2 colors side by side. So we're going to kind of build this together today so far. And we're going to, if you notice, we're starting here with our square that we finished, and we're going to start building them on like this, kind of in rows of color. So that way we never have a color repeating and we never have like blobs of color. The colors will be perfectly distributed through the entire blanket. So we have our Provence, and we're going to join one of these tourmalines, this sage green color, on today, okay? And then as we move along, we'll keep adding more and more and more, but we're going to be kind of going in a stripe. So for the next one, we'll have our next row. It's kind of like stair steps the way you build it. So we have, this would be our next row after that, theoretically, and that would be, because we did Provence, tourmaline, bone, that would be the Provence again, okay? So you can kind of see how we're mapping out those colors. And once we have the finished blanket, it looks really beautiful, and it kind of, your eye kind of goes through the whole piece. So let's scoot our little map out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the tourmaline per our little map here, our little color map, and I'm just going to scoot this square out of the way and grab my hook. So if you remember last week, and again, if you missed that tutorial, the link's down below if you want to catch up. We did 4 rounds, and I mentioned that on the 4th round is the join as you go part. So we're going to do rounds 1 through 3 together, really easy rounds. We've already done them, but just as a refresher. And then when we get to round 4, we'll grab this square again and hook it right on, okay? So to begin, we're going to start our square the same way. Now, if you've mastered this part, you can kind of skip ahead if you need to. So we're going to put a slip knot on our hook to begin. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Next, we're going to chain 4. So to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then join in that farthest chain from the hook, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. Okay, and you can kind of open it up. Once again, we're going to weave this in as we go along, okay? So what we want to do now is begin round 1. We're going to do rounds 1, 2, and 3 together. We're going to go a little bit quicker because we did this same exact thing last week, but we're just going to kind of zip through it as a refresher. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3. That counts as our first double crochet of the round. And we're going to go work 2 double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1 double crochet and 2 double crochet. Then we're going to chain 2, that creates our corner, and then we're going to work 3 double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1, 2, and 3, chain 2, 1 and 2 to create the next corner. Again, push those stitches over if you need to. Work 3 double crochet into the center of the ring once again. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2. That's okay. Still holding that tail along the edge. We worked our chain 2. Now work 3 double crochet into the center of the ring. 1, 2, and 3. All right, and now our last corner where we're going to join, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2 to make that corner, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch in the 3rd chain up. 1, 2, 3 to close the round. So insert the hook, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and round 1 is complete. Super easy. Okay, now if you remember, our hook isn't always in the right spot. We need to get it to that first corner space over here. So in order to do that, we're going to slip stitch over. So insert the hook, bring up a loop, bring that loop to the loop already on our hook, slip stitch into the next stitch, and slip stitch into the next stitch. And now our hook is at that corner space where it needs to be. Okay, so round 2, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Again, this counts as a double crochet. Work 2 double crochet into that corner space. 1 and 2. And then we're going to push this over a little bit to give us ourselves some room. And what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2 to create that corner once again and work 3 double crochet into that same corner space. So 1, 2, and 3. Just like that. Now, this is a little different. We're going to chain 1 and go to the next corner. We did this on this square too, and last week I explained doing a chain 2 in the corners just gives us a little bit more space to work. You're working more stitches into the corner, so it gives you just a little bit more room to work. Okay, so we did a chain 1. Now hop over to that next corner space and work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2 to make that corner and work 3 double crochet in that same space. So 1, 2, and 3. Now chain 1, and then we're going to hop over to that next corner space. So work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2 to work that corner once again, and work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Just like that. Chain 1, and I'll hop over to that last corner that you see here, and we're going to work 3 double crochet once again. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and 3 more double crochets into that same corner space. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, now join in that third chain up once again to close the round. Insert the hook, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and round 2 is complete. And you can see, I'm going to just tighten this middle part up a little bit. You can see it's starting to look like our other granny square, okay? So we're going to work one more round and then we'll start joining. For round 3, once again, we're going to slip stitch over to that first corner space that we come to here. So just work your slip stitches over. And now we're at the right spot, okay? So for round 3, we're just going to work it the same way we did our other square. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, work 2 double crochets into that corner space, 1 and 2, chain 2 to create the corner, and 3 more double crochets in that same corner space. So 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to chain 1 because we're working across, and in that side space here we're going to work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1. Now we're at a corner space, so 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 2, and then in that same corner space once again work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, work in that side space, so 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, work your corner again, 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 2 to create the corner, and 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, all in that same corner space. Chain 1, work 3 double crochet in the side space, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, we're coming around here. All right, that last corner space here, 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and 3 double crochet in the same corner space, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1. Now one more side space, 1 double crochet, 2, and 3. Okay, chain 1, and now what we're going to do is count in that third chain up and close with a slip stitch to close the round. Same thing we've been doing for all the rounds so far. Okay, now we're ready to begin round 4, and if you remember, I mentioned round 4 is the round that you do your joins on. Okay, so once again we need to slip stitch over to that corner space to begin the round. Okay, now I usually don't do joins on that first side, just to sort of, because there's a lot going on, you're starting a new round. So when we come around this way to this first corner, we'll do our join there. Okay, so what we're going to do here is chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and in that corner space, same thing, work 2 double crochet, because remember that chain 3 counts as one of our double crochets here, chain 2 to create the corner, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Now, remember when we did our round 4 over here, we had 2 corner spaces to work into, or 2 side spaces, excuse me. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, work your next side space here. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, and chain 1. All right, now we're ready to start joining. So go to this corner space and we're going to start the corner the way we normally would. So in that corner space, work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we're ready to do our join on this square and join it to this square. So what we're going to do is work a chain 1, and then we're going to grab our square in that corner space, go in from the top, reach back, scoop up that yarn. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. Okay, now we're going to finish the corner and work 3 double crochets into that corner space. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now we're going to continue down the side of our square. Okay, so you see we have our join here, and we're going to join into this next space here. Okay, so what we want to do now in that side space is go in from the top, reach back, scoop up that yarn, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and then go back into your square that you're working. Work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, just like that. Okay, then we're going to go to that next side space, go in from the top, reach back, scoop up that yarn, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. Now go back to your square, work 3 double crochets in that next space, 1, 2, and 3. Now go back to your square, go in from the top, reach back, scoop up that yarn. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. And now we're ready to work the corner. So work half the corner like we did before. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1 and then go into that corner space once again. Go in from the top, reach back, scoop up that yarn, and work your slip stitch join. So you may notice when we worked this before, and you can see how great that join looks. It just looks so seamless. There's no messy looking stitches or anything like that. They just sit side by side. So you may notice when we did our corners back here, we did a chain 1, then our join. Remember we did a chain 2 in this square? That join kind of replaces one of those chains. Just the same thing here. We did a join instead of a chain 1 in between. So it kind of replaced it, okay? Okay, so once you've done your join, you can finish your corner. So work 3 double crochet in that corner space. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now we can finish our square how we normally would. So go ahead and work a chain 1 this time. Go into the next space and work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, go to the next side space and work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Now go into that corner space and do your corners the same way you've been doing them. 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, all in that same corner space. So 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1 and finish that last side. So 3 double crochet in that first side space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 in our last space here. 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to join to close. So count that third chain up the way we've been doing it. Insert the hook, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop on your hook. Now we can cut the yarn for this square, leaving a little tail. Wrap the yarn around the hook, pull it through. So let's zoom out just a little bit here because I want to show you. You can kind of straighten out your squares if you want to. And they look great. They're really laying nicely side by side together, okay? So then what you're going to do is just keep working your squares. And I'm going to grab my little chart I made to show you. Because what we're going to do is keep joining our squares. And here's our little diagram here. So you can even kind of sketch this as you make it, or you could sketch the whole thing, and then as you add a square, you could put a little check mark by it, or you could sort of like shade it in to let yourself know that it's done. That way it'll kind of keep you straight. You don't have to do this. You may have it all in your head and be able to do that. But I like to see it visually. I like to kind of map it out. So one more instance I'm going to show you. We're going to do this square now, this bone. I'm going to do the joins and everything, but when we get to this part where you're joining, so far we've only joined one square onto one square, but there is another instance where you're joining one square onto 2 squares, or one square when you do this square down here onto 3 squares, okay? So when you come in and do a corner, when you join in the corner, it's just a little bit different. So when we rejoin, I'll have most of the next color done, and I'm going to show you how when you're joining one square into 2 squares or one square into 3 squares, how to go into that area in that middle where you have multiple areas, okay? Because it's a little bit different. So when we rejoin, I'll show you that part. Okay, I went ahead and started my square joining like we did these other 2. But now we're approaching an area where we have more than one square we're going to be joining our 3rd square into. So let's grab our hook. And what we're going to do is just, let me just come in a little bit so you can see better. We're going to start that corner the same way we did before. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Once again, do a chain 1, because instead of the chain 2 like we've done in the regular areas of our squares without joins, remember we did a chain 2 on the corner, so we do a chain 1 in the join, and that kind of replaces it. That join replaces one of those chain 1s. Okay, so before we went into the corner space. So if we go into the corner space of either one of these squares now, it's going to be off center. So it'll be off to this side or this side. So when you do a join in more than one square, what you'll do is you'll kind of pull it apart, and you can see there's a space here, okay? So you're going to go into that space. So go in from the top, reach back, scoop up that yarn, now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And then you can finish your corner, 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, and continue on with your square down the side, and be finished, okay? Okay, so we've gotten a couple more squares on here. So remember, we started with our lavender square, and then we added a sage, and then we did the bone color. Now I'm adding a 4th on here, and I've started my round, same thing, 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one we did our join, same thing. Now we are about to join into 3 squares this time. So remember, when we did 1 into 1, we just slip stitched into that corner space. When we did 1 into 2, we went straight across. Now for joining 1 square into 3 squares, we want to remember kind of that same rule of thumb. You just want to go directly across wherever you're going, just so nothing is off center. So when you go directly across here to the corner space, when you join these 2 together, it's symmetrical. And the same thing for when we joined this one here, we went in that middle space. So for this one, we're also going to go in the middle. And in this instance, that is the corner space of the square directly across from it, okay? So this square here, this corner space. So we're going to kind of hop over all this stuff going on here and go into that corner space of the square directly across. So let's come back in closer and I'm going to show you. Let's grab our hook. Now I started the first half of the square, or the corner rather. So we're going to do, remember, a chain one when we do that corner in our join. And then we're going to grab our squares, go into that corner space of the square directly across, reach back, scoop up that yarn, and then we're going to bring that loop through the loop that's already on our hook. And then you can kind of turn things as needed as you work. And then we're going to come back down and we're going to finish that corner. So do your 3 double crochets. 1, 2, whoops, I have my yarn split. Let's redo that second one again. Anytime you do a stitch and it's not working out, just pull it out right then and there and redo it. It'll save you time and aggravation later. So we did our 3 double crochets. So let me just move my hook out of the way. And you can see now nothing is off center. Everything fits perfectly, like kind of like a little puzzle, okay? And then I can just kind of continue around with my square. So this week's tutorial is complete. We have joined all of our squares. So just to recap, for week 1, and all these links can be found on the blog if you need to go back and view other tutorials. So just to recap, week 1, we talked about our supplies, everything that's needed for this project, yardage, sizing, all that. Week 2, last week, we did our first full granny square, all 4 rounds of this first granny square. And the week that we're in now, week 3 of our crochet along, we learned how to do the join as you go technique. And we also learned how to do different joins in different instances. So for week 4, next week, in the meantime, between now and next week or however long, this is not a timed kind of project, but we're going to keep adding squares, adding squares, adding squares using, let me just flip back to my notebook here, using our little chart. So we have done, if we want to shade it in or use a highlighter if you want to see it better, we have done this one. This is the Provence. So I have a P for Provence, T for tourmaline. This color is called tourmaline. And again, week 1, we talked about all the supplies if you kind of need a recap. And then we came down here and did the bone colorway. Okay. So if you go by the chart, this will be bone, this will be bone, and then we'll have a row of Provence. And we're kind of starting diagonally and working our way in. Now, as a helper, what you can do is grab a stitch marker or to just kind of keep yourself on track. See how I drew this little arrow here? That's where we started with our first square. What you can do is kind of match that up to your chart, and you could just tie a little piece of yarn on here or stitch marker, whatever you like, and that will kind of mark where that is. Because a lot of times when you're doing the join as you go technique, when you're crocheting, it's all spinning around and you're flipping things over, or you put it in a basket and come back to work on it later, and you may forget what corner you started on. So if you just tie a little marker on here, you'll know at all times where that top left corner is of your project, okay? So in the meantime, using your little chart, keep adding more and more and more squares until basically your blanket is as big as you'd like it to be. Now it can be just a nice little springy throw, which is what I'm going to do, or it can be a more involved blanket, like for a king-size bed. It would make a lovely baby blanket. It's very soft. So just keep going, adding squares, and kind of building up your blanket. And then next week when we rejoin for week 4, what we're going to do is add a nice simple little granny border to our blanket just to kind of frame it all in and kind of give it a more finished look. And also, if you're making your squares, if you notice when you join your grannies, sometimes you get a little bit of a dip here, and that's totally normal when you're joining squares. It kind of pulls them in. You can see that a little bit here too. So what we're going to do by adding that border is to kind of clean up the edges and just give it a nice framed finished look, okay? And then week 5, the last week of our crochet along, I always like to do a recap. So I do one post where I have all the parts of the crochet along so you can have it all in one handy spot. Because a lot of you like to make these in multiple projects, make many of them, or you like to come back to it later, or maybe you want to just kind of take your time as well. So take your time, relax with your hook, work on this at your own pace, and when we rejoin next week, I'm going to show you how to just do a real simple border around the edge. So I hope you enjoyed this project. As always, use the hashtag FiberFluxCal to share your work. I love to see what everybody's working on. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest FiberFlux video updates. Thanks again.